Okay, Chair, we are live.
Lovely, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Today we have a joint scrutiny committee. So we have the three committees, the Finance Panel, Learning and Skills Scrutiny Committee, Economies, Residents and Community Scrutiny Committee, and the Health and Care Scrutiny Committee and Finance Panel. I think we've said that twice. So I'd just like to welcome my fellow chairs, vice chairs and members of those committees and all the officers that are with us today. So I'd be grateful if officers could introduce themselves if they come to speak, and perhaps cabinet members as well. I think everybody's got their names on the screens anyway. So without further ado, we'll get into the agenda. I'm Councillor Angela Davis and I'm chairing today. And the first item is apologies.
Good afternoon. You have apologies from committee members, Councillor Glyn Preston, Councillor Amanda Jenner, Councillor Gary Mitchell, Councillor Bryn Davis and Councillor Susan McNicholas. Cabinet members, Councillor Jake Berryman, Leader and Member for People, Performance and Partnerships, Councillor David Thomas, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, and Officer Diane Reynolds, Director of Economic Development and Growth.
Okay, lovely for that. Thank you. Moving on, any declarations of interest, members? Anything to declare in relation to this agenda? I'm looking for hands up and I've got no hands, so lovely. Thank you. Moving on, declarations of party whip. Do we have any declarations of party whip? Bearing in mind that scrutiny is totally independent and we don't do party politics here. So I've got no hands up, so great. Moving on then, item 4 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Now I wasn't here for those, so if the members that were here can confirm if they are satisfied with those minutes. And with your permission, members, I'm going to link this to item 9, which is the Cabinet responses to the scrutiny recommendations. Now, in these minutes of the 11th of June, there were a number of observations and comments made by the committee, and there were 11 recommendations. In item 9, we can see the responses there. So item 9, for anybody's interest, is on page 101. If you want to click down to there, you can see the responses to the recommendations there. So 8 were accepted in full. Item 6, measure 6, which I'll just read it out to you, actually has not been responded to. It says, consider including complaints handling as a performance measure. And then we had 2 recommendations rejected. So of the members that were in that meeting, do you have any sort of feedback or comments you'd like to make on those? I think, just checking, I think it was Councillor Gwynver was in the chair. Yeah. Councillor Gwynver with us. Not.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Gwynver.
Yeah, no, I am here. I'm content with the minutes. I'm just looking at the responses to the recommendations as we speak. Obviously, item 6 is disappointing. It hasn't been answered to, but Cabinet is entitled to reject our recommendations. But I think we should bear them in mind when we're going through the document today.
Lovely. And it may be, if we keep it in mind, your comment there, number 6, we could perhaps add something to the end of our recommendations on today's meeting, if you so wish. Okay, members, so are we happy to accept those? Oh, Councillor Peter Lewington, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I was just following up that point on complaints there. Does the absence of a response mean we are going to get one, or does it mean the points not been accepted?
Well, we don't know because there's no comment. So I think we can perhaps resubmit it, would perhaps be. Oh, Ellen, would you like to come in there and clarify for us?
Hi, yes. Apologies. I understood that we did provide a response from that. So I will look into that and we'll hopefully provide something by the end of the meeting. But if not, I'll definitely supply an answer to that.
That's lovely. Thank you, Ellen. That's good. Okay, then, members. In that case, are we happy to accept those minutes? I've got one hand, Peter. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, I've got a few hands up.
Our second, yep.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you all. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the Corporate Strategic and Equities Plan. We're seeing here that the plan is in the name of Councillor Jake Berriman. We've been given apologies from Councillor Jake and Catherine James. So I believe it's Matthew here. I believe Matthew's going to introduce this paper for us. Is that correct, Matthew?
Yes, yeah, I'm covering for Jake in his absence.
Lovely, thank you. So we'll hand over to you. If we could, Matthew, have a brief introduction to the paper. I'm trotting us along because of the time constraint that we have, but obviously it's important that you get to do your introduction. So thank you very much, Councillor Matthew.
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, colleagues. Thanks for your time. The Corporate Strategic Equality Plan has undergone significant updates and, as you'll recall, was approved by Council in July this year. Recommendations previously provided by Joint Scrutiny have been incorporated into the Strategic Equality Plan and Scorecard, including updates around organising the actions and measures by outcomes that support each objective, allowing progress against each aspiration to be assessed, and providing benchmarking against previous performance. My understanding is that this Scrutiny Committee is tasked with reviewing the performance for the first quarter, which is April the 1st to June the 30th, to ensure sufficient progress towards the 3 objectives outlined in the plan are being made. Those 3 wellbeing objectives are ensuring that we enhance people's awareness of services and how to access them and enabling them to make informed choices, supporting high quality sustainable employment by providing training opportunities and pursuing real wage employer accreditation, and working to tackle poverty and inequalities to support the wellbeing of the people of Powys. It's important to note, I think, that the Strategic Equality Plan and the Corporate Plan focuses on the objectives, actions and measures in the plan, and that doesn't include the other business as usual activities around our transformation portfolio. But it does ensure that compliance with statutory obligations set out in the Future Generation Wales Act and the Local Government and Elections Act Wales and the Equality Act are met. Colleagues, the measures have been extracted out of the scorecard and they are available on page 37 of the pack, and page 51 of the agenda pack. You'll also find the off-track measures and the commentary to accompany them. In terms of the objectives, in terms of objective 1, 34 measures in total, 59% on track, 24% off track, and 15% not due to be reported as yet. In relation to objective 2, 43% of our measures are on track, 26% are off track, 30% of those not due to be reported at this time. And in relation to objective 3, 39% of measures are on track, 27% are off track, and 34% are not due to be reported in this quarter. I think to give committee assurance, Cabinet members are actively monitoring their key performance targets and their objectives, and will be challenging those with heads of service in their regular catch-up meetings. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Matthew. And I think that really sort of explains, that was going to be my first question really, was to ask you to explain how officers, yourselves as cabinet members and directors, are using this scorecard to help decision making within the council, because it's clear to me that there's an awful lot of work gone in building it. The narrative in the online scorecard gives an awful lot of information that one assumes has taken some time to populate. So I think what we'll do, we'll work our way through the document, so from page 37 onwards, and I'll welcome questions from the members of the scrutiny committees, and we'll try and work through it in that sort of logical order and see how that goes. It may be that certain numbers in the 3 I've lost my train of thought. The 3 objectives, sorry, link together, and we might sort of want to flick between the 2, but we'll try and follow it in a logical pattern if we can. So members, we're on page 37. You can see the 3 objectives, and as Councillor Matthew highlighted there, which are on, off and not to be reported. And on page 38, we move on to the measures themselves. So I'm opening up for questions. And first out of the stocks is Councillor Gareth Jones.
Yes.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. Can I take you back to page 31, the actual report?
You can indeed.
Because the point I want to make is Matthew's given us a very good summary of the report, and a very good summary where we are against each objective. But what he said is not in the main body of the report. Yes, they're in the appendices, but I think, you know, that overall position where we are, total number of objectives, those number on track, those off track for each of the objectives in a table on the front of the as part of the report would be really good. And I think the report also gives some examples where there's good practice, but I think it also includes some examples of where the performance has not reached the target we wished for. You know, I've just looked at Objective 103, and when you look at the narrative in those are not actually on target, that gives the officers give some really good narrative around what actions are being taken, and I think that would be good. Because most members of the public, if they look at these reports, they're not going to go to the appendices. They're going to look at the main body of the report. They want to see what's going well, where we are overall. We've got 132 objectives. Of the 132 objectives, what percentage are on target, what percentage are off target, and I would also say what percentage of those are being overachieved by a significant margin that would question then the validity of actually setting the target. You know, are the targets being set too low? Are they challenging enough? As everyone knows, I'm fixated about numbers and targets, etc. But I always believe that a target needs to be challenging but achievable. But if you've got something that's overachieving by 15, 16%, that's not a challenging target in my mind.
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought there, because you're bringing out lots of different issues there. So first of all, your primary issue there, and it is something that Councillor Gareth, you have raised before, is the quality and layout of reports coming to scrutiny. And I think the author of this report isn't with us today to defend that, but I do agree with you that maybe there is a piece of work we could do about the style, the layout, and the quality of reports coming to scrutiny. So I think, can we park that little bit for now? Because I think that would be a good recommendation to come out of this session, that maybe there's a piece of work there. In terms of where you're mentioning now, where we're setting targets, I think that's going to come out now, I hope, as we go through these papers. So thank you again for spotting that and highlighting that. I think that's really crucial, that A, our targets are correct to start, and then B, that we scrutinise our performance against those targets after. So thank you very much. Two really important points. I can see a few more hands up now, Gareth, so if you don't mind, we'll take some others, and I'm sure you'll come back in. So Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Garrett's already covered the one part of my question, but I was just wondering how were the targets determined for the the baselines, basically?
Okay, well, obviously we've got several services here, but would anybody like to come in and sort of explain how they set their service targets? Whose hand have I got? Councillor Matthew.
Thank you. I think this is a really important question. So in setting service targets for the areas I'm politically responsible for as a portfolio holder, I think there are a couple of things that I'm always looking to consider. So what are the guidelines and regulations set by regulators or government in terms of what we've got to achieve? So if we look at things like disabled adaptations, we've got some clear frameworks that we've got to work towards. So those clearly have a bearing on how we set targets. I'm looking at capacity within the service to be able to deliver. So conscious of what heads of service are telling me in terms of workload and what's in the system to be able to achieve. I'm looking at what our political priorities are as an administration to deliver against our objectives. And I'm also looking at previous years' performance. So in previous years around, say, housing voids, for example, were we meeting the target, or was it too generous, or were we too far away? And we have made some adjustments to those targets throughout my time as the portfolio holder, because the situation has been dynamic and things have had to change. So I'm always conscious that how can we really test ourselves and push ourselves to succeed, but also not to break the system and to break the workforce morale in not being able to meet our expectations as well. So there's a fine balance, but we're looking at a whole host of external factors plus our own organisational structures in reaching those.
Okay, so it's ambitious and achievable, isn't it, really, is the aim. Dr. Richard, you had your hand up. Did you want to come in at that point?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to comment in education the importance of benchmarking data as well. So at a school level, that's when a school is benchmarked against schools of a similar demographic. Equally at a local authority level, where we feature as part of 22 local authorities, and then our targets are also benchmarked against expected and modelled outcomes at a national level as well. So just wanted to provide that detail. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Danny, you satisfied?
Yes, thank you. Very, very good answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I guess just adding a bit more to the questions from Councillor Danny and Councillor Gareth there was the understanding of the targets I feel is important. You know, to understand the criteria. And so thank you to Councillor Matthew for a bit more explanation there. But I guess, for example, if I look at the one number of times people have viewed the council's social media content.
Yeah,
we've
okay,
been
so you're on
told-
page 38 and that's target 101.
101,
just-
yeah, apologies, Chair.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so we've stuck 1 million in there. I've absolutely no idea why it's 1 million, whether that's a good target, whether it's a bad target. And then at the end, what do we do with the results if we've hit 1 million? You know, do we make it 1.5 million next time? So for me, understanding the target's important. And then the other one, if I just made, Chair, is and Councillor Matthew did touch upon it, I think, is it would be nice if there would be some way of highlighting whether these targets are from, say, Welsh Government, like the waste recycling target of 70% is, whether it's a legal target or whether it's just a target that we as a county council have set for ourselves. And that would just give a bit more of an understanding of the implications and the importance if we're not hitting those targets.
Okay, thank you. I can see Catherine James has a hand up. Did you want to come in there, Catherine?
Yeah, just briefly on the point around social media. So the target for that one, obviously, it's not a national measure. It's something that we've set locally. We're trying to understand the reach that we do have on social media, because obviously that seems to be more, you know, more people are using that than traditional press. So yeah, we did do 930 digital posts in the quarter, and the targets actually we analysed the information that we gather on the platform that's used to do the press releases and such. So we have understood kind of where we've been in the past and made it slightly more ambitious, but obviously not hit that one yet. So yeah, it's something that it's new for this. That was the first one we've reported on that, and we'll be reviewing it as we go to see how that does work out. Hopefully that helps give a bit of context.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, Councillor Lucy, got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the report itself on page 33. Under engagement activities, it mentions some specific situations. So the Brecon Town Plan and the Severn Valley Water Management Strategies, and both those are marked as external third-party link. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, so I just wanted to check, because I know I've attended some of the Severn Valley Water Management events, and as far as I'm aware, there was no involvement from the County Council in that. It was other bodies who were running that. So I wondered why that was in our strategy.
Okay, who would like to answer that question for Councillor Lucy? What would that come under? Engagement. Daniel. Hello, welcome, Daniel. Daniel Burgess. I think you're on mute, Daniel. No, not hearing you.
Better?
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah. Yes, sorry about that, Chair. Yes, so thank you for the question, Councillor. In terms of those programmes, you mentioned there in terms of these consultants, that they are powers programmes, but at times, given the number of projects we're undertaking as part of that, we do use external resource where appropriate. So there wasn't always a powers presence at those, but they are actually programmes run and delivered by us in partnership, in conjunction with partners.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lucy. Councillor Gwynber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We really struggle with this document, but it's a document we've got, and we need to be aware that this document is there so that we improve our services for everybody. Not for our staff and our public. So I'm just going to focus on objective 1 at this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Improving awareness and access to services. So out of the 20 measures, 6 were on track, 3 were off track, 2 had no data, 8 had no targets, they were just for monitoring purposes, and 1 was not reported at all. That's not good enough. That's not giving me the information which I need. So the first question is, how are we going to address them measures in an acceptable target? If the reporting back on all those 20 measures isn't good enough. So that leads me to look further into the document, and in that objective 1, I see 3 key failings there. So measure 49, only 14% of respondents were satisfied with opportunity to participate in decision making. The target's 25%. That's a long way off. Measure 50 or 050, those same 14% satisfaction with community engagement in council actions, and 051, only 43% were satisfied with contacting the council in their preferred method language. They're a long way off making their targets. So there's 2 questions there. When are we going to get, how are we going to use this document to get them measures on track to make improvements? And those 3 key failings, how are we reacting to them failings to make them better? Long-winded question, but that's my reading of objective 1. I spent a bit of time on it, and that's what stares out to me, really. Key failings and not improving measures or getting measures to a position where they should be.
Who can answer Councillor Gwynver's questions there? Is that Catherine? Yeah, Catherine.
Councillor Gwynfor, which report are you looking at? Because they're old measures. They're not something that we're tracking within this corporate and strategic equality plan. Are you looking at the report?
That's objective 1, April to June 25.
Page 38 of the agenda pack.
Right. This is notes I made yesterday, to be fair, but I'll have a relook at that. If my information's wrong, I do apologise.
So, Councillor Gwynver, we're on page 38 of the full pack, and before us are the measures that are reportable in this quarter.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at them again now. Apologies if I've got that wrong.
No problem at all. No problem. That's fine. Thank you. But Councillor Gwynver does raise a very good question there, that what do we do? So we've had an explanation of how some of the targets are set, and we have to assume then that they're as correct as they can be and as ambitious as they can be for now. But in terms of looking on this page, there are 4 targets, 3 targets not met and 2 not reportable. Where do we go with that information? What happens next? So let's pick one then. 105, the percentage of skilled calls to the contact centre. So we've got a target of 85% and it's off track. So Councillor Rafe, would you like to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So on page 51 onwards, there's a summary of the measures that are not on track.
Yeah.
And starting on page 52 onwards, there is some commentary that has been included by the departments as to the reasons why those targets are not currently being met and the measures that are currently being pursued to correct that. And obviously, if your committee requires any additional information, we've got officers here ready to provide that.
So there we go, members. If we jump between those 2 pages and zip down to page 52, we can see the commentary there. So how are we feeling about this information? So Councillor Gareth Radcliffe.
Thank you. I've just got a general question regarding our monitoring. I'd like to know off officers. This is all well and good as monitoring, but are we looking at the same type of monitoring year on year? When's the last time we reviewed it, and are we looking to review it at any time? I know that's a very general question, but looking at data is all well and good and looking back, but if we're not looking apples against apples, it doesn't really give us an indication regarding the data there. So I'd just like to know for the committee if when's the last time we reviewed this data, and are we monitored exactly the same? The example I used, the reason I asked this was when we used to have the old employment committee and we had sickness absence, it was slightly changed over a number of years. So when you're looking back at previous years' data to see if we're improving over time, actually you can't monitor that. So just an understanding, are we monitoring exactly the same each year on all these figures?
Catherine, would that be yourself? Would you be able to?
Yeah, I can provide a response. So yeah, we have measure definition documents for all of the measures here. As you can see, this is a snapshot. So in the appendices, we do have a snapshot of the past 5 quarters, including the quarter that we're in. But on the scorecard itself, some measures do even give you historic data back to 2023-24.
Yeah.
So wherever possible, we have got that historic information to see trends over time. But as you can imagine, when we're trying to put this in here for the appendices, you have to kind of make it fit onto an A4 page. So obviously you've got the 5-year trend there, but that's why we have to go down to the off-track commentary in order to be able to fit that amount of information sort of here. So yeah, hopefully, but it all depends measure by measure. We don't generally change measures. So I know with the sickness absence one, that has been the same for a long time here. So it's average sickness absence per FTE, but it would all be dependent on whatever measure you're looking at, really. Sorry, I can't answer for everyone, but that's a general response.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Gareth nodding. Councillor Gwynber, is that a legacy hand, or did you want to come back in
It's
there?
a legacy hand. I'm still having a look at the data now, but one or
No
two of
problem.
the things which I mentioned before, I've already found. 14% of residents, only 14% of residents felt satisfied that opportunities to participate in decision making. The target's 25%. So, you know, the comment I'm making is how do we get to that target of 25% from utilizing this document? And again, preferred contact methods, 43% were satisfied with contacting the council in their preferred method or language. The target is 50%. How did we get to the position where we need to be?
Okay, got no hands up there to respond to you, Councillor Gwynber. We'll go on to Councillor Allard and see how we progress. Councillor Allard, with your questions, please.
Sorry, Chair. I wanted to go on to objective 3, but are we working our way through them slowly?
Well, I was hoping to, but if you'd like to jump down to objective 3, I'm happy to do that.
I do feel this is the most important objective from a council point of view, really.
Okay.
And it goes back to how do you set targets? If you look at target 307, it talks about number of schools in nesting category.
Councillor Allard, could I ask you just to call out what page number you were on so we can follow?
45, 46.
Lovely, thank you.
At the very top of page.
Yeah, with you.
46, sorry. It just goes back to this Gareth's point about setting targets. The actual and the target is the same in 306, 307. You would have thought the target there should be 0, because the council would not want to see any school in Eston, especially after the report that was sent to made on Powys County Council, where Eston was quite critical of the standards, school standards within Powys. You really would have thought those targets should have been 0. Why is it 11?
Okay, so we've got portfolio holder for education, Councillor Pete Roberts, and we've got Dr. Richard with us here. Would one of you like to? Yeah, Councillor Pete, thank you.
And just to add to that, it makes it green. So it's brilliant. We got it's sort of endorses schools being in Estin category, but
Okay.
it's quite
I think
shocking to be
Councillor
honest.
Peter's frozen. I don't know, Dr. Richard, would you like to come in and help him out? Oh, there we are.
Councillor Aled, we heard in the conversation earlier that the targets need to be realistic and achievable. And in looking at the targets for this year, we've taken the realistic approach that schools are going to be coming out of an Estin category. But as we put the improvement work in, there are still going to be schools that are going into a category. So you will have seen that in terms of Leighton coming out, but Pristine going in. So what we took a view within the service was that for this strategic year, bearing in mind it runs until April, the achievement would be actually to maintain the status quo and not actually see a deterioration while the work that the schools improvement service are putting into place. Because as I'm sure you'll recognise, that a school that has gone into special measures in the last 3 to 6 months is likely not to be coming out of special measures for at least the next 6 to 9 months, because that's the sort of length of time that Estin generally take to have confidence that the changes that they want to see have actually embedded. So what we are looking at here is stabilisation of the status quo while we undertake the improvement, with a view to results coming in with schools coming out of special measures in the next 12 to 18 months.
But Chair, it would be impossible to fail this target on that premise. You cannot have a target which is impossible to fail to achieve.
If we get more schools going,
if you could have filled in the previous quarter of 24-25, that data is readily available. To give us that comparison, the only comparison we have in quarter 2 of 24-25 is 9 and 6, which is smaller numbers than we've got in quarter 1 of this year's. Why would you set a target that's impossible to fail?
It's very possible to fail if Estin bring more schools into special measures than we bring out.
I assume you'd be changing the target up to...
No, it's the target.
Oh, I think we may have lost Councillor Peter. I think, Councillor Aled, you've made your point there very strongly, and I think unless Dr. Richard wants to add anything to that.
I think the Chair, I think the
target that we've got set for this year.
I'm sorry, Councillor Pete, you keep freezing, so we keep losing you.
I will try to shift to a different Wi-Fi setup, see if that's better.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Dr. Richard, sorry.
No, thank you, Chair. I was saying I think the portfolio holder has responded, but just to emphasise that end point that was made around inspection cycles as well. So we know that for our current schools that are in a category, we know broadly what the inspection cycles will look like. So when the opportunity to bring a school out falls.
Okay, Councillor Aled, I think you've made the point very well there, and it backs up what Councillor Gareth was saying earlier about how the targets are set and ensuring that they are ambitious enough, and maybe we can make a note on that later on. So I've got now Councillor Gareth Jones and Councillor Rafe. Councillor Rafe, did you want to come in at that point?
Only to go back to Councillor Gwynfor's questions that didn't get a response. I've tried to find the data. It might be me, but I can't see that. So I just wonder if he's able to provide where that information is. Then I'm keen to get a response to his questions.
Thank you, Councillor Rafe. I think Councillor Gwynfor's just checking.
Yeah, no,
oh, there we are, Councillor Gwynfor.
Yeah, but that's an interesting comment, really, because I've gone deep into the document and followed links and things like that. This is the difficulty in reading the document, and providing the outcomes which we need. And I'd be interested to hear the conversation between Councillor Pete and Councillor Aled. I'm confused with the outcomes of education will, and how they will give the improvement that we need to see from the reading of the document. So, you know, there's a further one, and it just, we have to search into so much information to get outcomes and information into the document. It's not a criticism. It's not a criticism at all, but I just find it really, really confusing. And like I said in my opening salvo, is all I'm looking for the document is to provide improvement to the council, and I can't find that by just straightforward looking at it. And we have got perhaps more in-depth knowledge than a member of the public would.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you all. What we've got here, we've got the document pack, and we've got some sort of screenshots, I suppose, for a better word, of the actual live document off the website. Now, what that is giving us, we're seeing some information overline, but it doesn't allow us to click through the pages as we would if we were on the online document, and it is very difficult. I've tried having both open together, and it is quite difficult. So I think maybe there is a piece of work again for us to do about how this information can be presented to us so that we can give it meaningful scrutiny in the future. So maybe that's something for us to sort of consider going forward. But in answer to Councillor Gwynber's points there, we were talking about education, which is objective 3, and objective 3 is to work to tackle poverty and inequality to support the well-being of people of Powys, and education is at the core of that, really, isn't it? But if we flick to page 54, there is some narrative around the off-track measures that I think may be helpful to members. So when we're challenging those, but I'll go back to members with their hands up for now. So Gareth Jones again. Thank you, Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been listening to the discussion, and and I think I've got a proposal that may actually help us. When we have Health and Care Scrutiny Committee, and we're considering performance data there, Children's Services have a top 5 of their KPIs. And it's really good. So they've analysed their data, and they've chosen 5 key performance indicators that if they're all working well, then we've got a great deal of faith in the service. We've got 3 objectives here with, I think, 132 different targets. If each of those objectives just at a top 5 that was reported on, that would, and they could summarize the main objectives in targets in each of those objectives, I think that would make both our lives and the members of the public's lives more informed and help us that. You know, I've listened to the discussion between Councillor Peat and Councillor Added, and what they're both saying is I could accept both of their arguments, but as Councillor Added said, we've got we're meeting a target around the number of secondary and all age schools in an STEM category. We're meeting that, but in effect, that we, as Alice said, that target, the actual should be 0. You know, we don't want any of our schools in an STEM category. At the moment, we're failing only every 1,000 pupils we've got in our across the 13 sites of our schools, as it appears at the end of Q1.
Okay, thank you for that. I can see Jane Thomas has just put her hand up. Jane, did you want to come in there?
If I may, Chair, I think I've been listening to the start of this committee, and I think just to clarify a few things. So the Corporate and Strategic Equality Plan sets out the objectives for the whole council, and that is supported then by a whole host of measures and targets. All these committees were involved in setting those targets, in approving the plan, which was done back in June. And I think really we wouldn't be able to have a top 5 because all of these clearly have to be delivered in order for us to meet those objectives. So I think really for this committee, the best way to approach it is where those measures were approved and they're on track, you have assurance that they are going to enable us to meet our objectives. Where they are off track, We've got more detail here about the actions and what officers will do to support the delivery of those objectives. And I think that's probably where committee should focus, to get assurance from portfolio holders and officers here today that the actions we can now take based on what you're seeing will enable us to meet those objectives for the whole council. So I would challenge some of the conversations we've had so far, and we need to actually focus on the data that you've been given, which takes officers and everybody a long time to pull together to enable effective scrutiny. And I think that would be a better approach for the committee.
Sorry, Angela, can I just make a comment on that? And I'm sure Jane doesn't mean that, but if you take objective 306, which is a number of secondary all age schools in an STEM category, that surely is not meeting the objective of the county council. Because, you know, we've met the target, it's shown green, but we've got all our secondary schools in an STEM category, which is clearly not what Dr. Richard and anybody in the education service wants.
And because it's coming out to that, because it's green, there's no commentary at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, members, we've got 20 minutes left of our first hour, and we really need to be scrutinising these measures individually. I think you've made some really good points there, but have we scrutinised the document, as Jane has pointed out before us? So I'd like to sort of get into some real proper scrutiny questions if we can now. As I've said, I do think there is a discussion and a debate for us to have, perhaps in a separate meeting, about how this is presented to us, how we read and understand it, to help ensure that we do give this the robust scrutiny it needs. But as I say, we got 4 committees here. We've got lots of members in the room. I'd like you all really to come forward with your questions now in this final time before we run out of time without doing our job. So Councillor Danny, then Councillor Chris. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Chair. This is something I got in my notes for further down the list, but it is fitting into the previous conversations, I think. Been as I'm on now, I'll come out with it. My original questions were, what is the timeline for reducing the number of schools in STEM categories to 0? And how will the improvement board measure success and ensure sustainable change?
Thank you, Councillor Danny. Excellent. I can see Richard and Peter are there. The cogs are turning there. So Councillor Peter, you put your hand up first.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is we want to get down to 0 as soon as possible. That means working solidly with each of the schools, looking at their specific improvement requirements that Estin have identified, and working with them so that they get to the point where Estin, in one of their visits, decide that the time is right to move them out. How long that will be will depend on what the work is that needs doing. If you recall, we had a whole raft of school improvement where the recommendation was we need to improve the site security. Now, putting up green fencing around a school, apart from the cost of it, is a lot easier than going in with a root and branch improvement of, for example, middle leadership or teaching and learning. Our experience, my experience of working with Gwenyved and Brecon high schools in their improvement journey, is that at a secondary level, you are looking at between 12 and 18 months from the point that the school fully embraces the change. And I say that because the length of time that takes can vary. From that point, for them reaching the stage where Estin will be comfortable that changes in respect of teaching and learning and leadership have not just been made, but actually have embedded. So if you look at where we are at the moment, assuming there are no more significant changes in terms of schools going into a category, we are looking at a realistic proposition of around the end of 27, start of 28, If we do all of the work we need to do and the schools respond and there are no hiccups, because change of leadership can be quite a big hiccup, we should be in a position where we have removed all of the schools that are in a category at the moment out of a category. So that's the best I can give you based on what I have seen and observed, how Estin respond, how individual schools respond, and the level of support that we can put in, and the learning that we have made from the works that we have done over the past 3 years. And obviously, Dr. Richard might like to comment further on that from a professional rather than an observational perspective.
Dr. Richard, yeah, please do come in.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to respond to part of the Council's question about the input and scrutiny and challenge from the Improvement Board, which everybody will be familiar with, the AIB Accelerated Improvement Board. So that Improvement Board holds the Education Service, indeed the whole Council, to account against the Council's Education Integrated Business Plan. And that business plan responds directly to the Estin recommendations from our Estin report, plus other areas that we know as a council we need to focus on. So there's a really clear mechanism for that board focusing on our IBP, which is of course connected to the Corporate and Strategic Equality Plan. So that's how that board, through its support and its challenge, drives improvement and ensures that we're focusing on the right thing in education. And then a tier below the Education Integrated Business Plan are the Education Service Integrated Delivery Plans. So that's when all colleagues from across all services that support education improvement in our authority articulate what they do in order for us to fulfill the requirements of the action in the integrated business plan. So it's a tiered approach to planning for educational improvement, with the Accelerated Improvement Board holding us to account to those very clear actions with very clear timescales and lead individuals who are responsible for them. So it's a really rigorous process that we've set up. And Chair, I'd just like to make one other observation. I appreciate we're talking here about an Estin target, but it would be remiss of me to say, while this is about Estin, it's actually about us knowing our schools better, having better data on our schools, better evaluation, so that we can then target our resource and support and challenge in the right way in schools. Our ambition is to get ahead of the inspectorate, so that we aren't waiting for the inspectorate to tell us about ourselves. Yeah. I appreciate that's not one of the objectives here, but I just think in the context of how we're thinking about the education improvement, it's an important point to make. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Chris in a minute, but if I can just myself then ask a question as we're on education. We've got 5 measures there about attendance, all of which are off track, some not very much at all, and we're told it's a slightly improving picture in some areas and not others. I'm just wondering what, I know that the schools, certainly the schools I'm involved in, they do an awful lot of work to try and encourage attendance, working with the families, etc., etc. But they are reliant to some degree on the educational welfare officers. I don't remember reading anything in here. What is the power and the influence they have? Do we have enough of them? And how realistic is it that we can meet these targets? Because at the end of the day, if our pupils aren't in school, they're not learning, and it doesn't matter how good everything else is, does it? So who would like to answer that? I've got Pete and Richard with their hands up. Shall we go to Dr. Richard? Is that right?
Yeah, so the portfolio holder did have his hand up first, so it just gives the portfolio holder an opportunity if he wants to, but I'm happy to respond.
Yeah, no, happy for Pete to come in. Every time I talk, a little box pops up telling me I'm talking, and it covers the top line of my screen.
Thanks for that. Dr. Richard will come in and focus on your specific question, Angela, because it's an administrative one. What I wanted to focus on were where we are, and I want to lead back to some of the comments about setting targets as well. This is a measure that we're setting for a financial year, and we're reporting in an academic year. So actually, we've had the first 2 terms of the figures that you're looking at before we actually came into this year. And if you put that in that context, we are seeing a 1 percentage point improvement over where we were in the previous academic year. So we're kind of halfway towards our targets on a lot of these things. And we would expect them to be off track at this point. The key thing to recognise, and it doesn't come across here, and it does lead into the benchmarking across, is that if you look at the national figures that have been reported, Powys are currently sitting at 3rd in the overall measures on performance in relation to children attending school. No one has
I actually, Councillor Peat, I'm going to hold that thought there, because we have got a Learning and Skills Scrutiny Committee meeting coming up, and we will be looking at the Powys figures in context of the Wales-wide figures. So we'll look at that in more depth. But it's really the answer to that question about our education welfare team. Are they robust enough? Do we have enough of them? Are they doing a good enough job, I suppose? Dr. Richard.
Yeah, I'll come into that. Just to answer that, I need to explain a piece of work which is happening, which will support the Education Welfare Service and EWOs. So our school improvement advisors are focusing more closely with head teachers and attendance leads in the evaluation of attendance data, which looks at whole school data and groups of learners data. I say that because that data is now better informing the work of the Education Welfare Service. So the service that we're providing to schools is directly responding to the evaluation that schools have done about their particular groups of learners and what we need to do to get them attending school. So some of the ways that we've strengthened that provision, we've increased the family support that's available to parents and carers who are struggling to get their children into school. We've branched out to have EWOs in open evenings, parents' evenings, and in some of our schools, we're running coffee mornings as well. So becoming really proactive and offering a wraparound service based on good quality data so we know where to target our resources. 2 further points I'd like to make as well. We do have the Powys Attendance Network, which we have strengthened, and we're securing good attendance at. That network is sharing best practice. And one thing that that network is doing, that network is communicating to the local authority what the local authority can do to support schools. So just to give an example around that, schools have returned codes of conduct to us to allow them now to be able to issue fixed term penalty notices where appropriate. I do put the where appropriate in brackets there. And the local authority now have a communication programme for us to support schools in their individual school messaging. So as an example, we wrote out to all parents and carers in the summer term, outlining and emphasising the importance of not taking holidays during term time, with a simple breakdown of what 1 or 2 missed days equates with in terms of learning. But that local authority approach is directly coming out of that attendance network of which EWOs would be part of. So it's an answer in the round there, because EWOs fit into the bigger picture.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Richard. Okay, I'm going to bring Councillor Chris in now, and I'm hoping that we're going to be looking at some health and social care, perhaps area questions. Lovely.
I'm just going to pick on one if I can, Angela, but thank you for that. I think this is work in progress, and it's not necessarily perfect in all examples, but I think the discussion is helpful because we'll home it in, we'll improve it, and I see there could be some opportunities to make it stronger on the. I'm just going to look at objective 1, and I'm looking at the measure of 111. Percentage of contacts to adult social services through the assist program, receiving information, advice. A higher number is better. Now, it's the first quarter that there's been some form of information coming through, and then we're at 29.2 2%, so it's green. So most people may just look over it, but to me, it doesn't tell me anything
No.
at all. Our target is 25% of what?
Yeah.
That's my first thing, because I've got no contextualization now of what this means. And if I take it where we're doing much better on there at 29.2, what are the implications of that in relation to time factor of who's given the information, or is it on a phone system, or on the what are the workload demands that then fall out from that, and then what happens to the other 75% of people? Are they not able to get through on the so there are loads of questions that come out now. Again, if I look through the document, I can probably find there are interdependencies with other measures. So in my view, one of the ways that you could consider looking at this document is to look at the interdependencies of the different measures and see whether we could cluster them. So you could then have as a cluster presentation of whether a target is actually green, because it's going to cross over some of the different measures. So those are my observations to it. It doesn't really tell me anything, and I could go in and scrutinise
I can see we got Councillor Sean and Sharon Fruin have got their hands up, so I don't know who wants to come in first to respond. But Chris, you make a really good point there. When percentages are given, we can be 2 or 5 or 20% above target, but what does that mean? Is it one person or 1,000 people? So who wants to come in? Sharon, I can see you've got your mic off, so did you want to come in first?
Thank you, Chair. I think you make a really good point, Councillor. In this context, it is the percentage of all the contacts through the assist, so the front door, and those contacts could be for a number of reasons. Some will progress to an assessment. What we're trying to do is ensure, and this is what we need to get better at in the narrative, is describing what we want to see is an increase in those people that we can actually support at the front door through information and advice without them needing to go on to an assessment or something else. And some of the things that we're doing to increase that is through our self-service website and increasing the skills of the officers at the front door, but recognise that needs to be within that narrative. And as per workload, there is a team there, and we do analyse the types of calls they're taking and what time is spent on the calls. So that is taken into consideration and analysed. But yes, so that's the kind of contextualisation for that. But yeah, I agree that we need to be better at communicating that and describing what that means.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Sean, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's
Thank you, Sharon.
It's roughly what Sharon said that I was going to say, but more broadly, I do agree that we need to get better at providing an explanation for where, the context for where these things sit. So people phone assist for a variety of different reasons, as Sharon said, but quite often they're not assessment type inquiries. Sometimes people phone because they're trying to get in touch with their social worker. They go to the website, they see that it's for adult social care, and they see the assist number, and they phone for various things. So we do have a lot of calls coming through, as Sharon said, that might lead to an assessment, but we also have calls coming through for people who don't need an assessment and actually don't need information and advice, really. They just need to be signposted somewhere. So it's about filtering those out so that we can assess the effectiveness of the assist number.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
We are working on that.
Thank you, Councillor Sean. So I'm really conscious of the time. I'm slightly frustrated as a chair because we just don't, this format isn't working in terms of us getting into the nitty gritty of each of these points here. And I am so aware that officers have put a lot of work into this and we're just not having the time to do it justice, or maybe the skill on some of us in that we need to navigate between so much information here to be able to work this out. I really would like to add that we put a recommendation in at the end of this on how we can make this better so that it is really purposeful and meaningful and delivers for the councillor. There's lots of you in the room I've not heard from. I've not got any hands up. We've had no questions about highways, transport, recycling. We've had no questions about the data protection, and we just don't have the time. So the two hands I've got up, Councillor Aled, Councillor Danny. Aled, back with you.
Apologies, Chair, but really quick points from me. The Director of Corporate Services encouraged us to look at the off-track measure commentary below.
Yeah.
And I would expect to see remedial actions within that commentary.
Okay.
And when you look at the school attendance, it's
so
got
Aled, sorry, Councillor Aled, for everybody's purposes, what page are you on again now?
54-ish.
54, lovely, thank you.
So I don't see the remedial stuff within that commentary. Dr. Richard did a brilliant job of explaining how they're going to deal with improving attendance, but that's not contained within that commentary. There should be some sort of hint at that. And can I go to the section just for the highways one, measure 352, which is on the page below.
Yep.
And you know, there's stuff off measure there, and the commentary about the AMX system not working. How long has that system not been working? I know your scrutiny committee will probably be aware of this, Angela. I don't know, but the AMX is an incredibly important system to gather the data, gather complaints, etc., to inform the cabinet about what they should do in the future. How long has this system been down? And there are other measures. I know Welsh Government have a measure about road quality, whether it's improving or not. You can see their scanners traveling around the county sometimes. But I'm really frustrated that we have been encouraged to look at the off-track measure commentary, and it's quite poor in some parts. And I think individual scrutiny committees need to take away various elements of this to have a more in-depth look at some of the stuff. And just very quickly, at the end of the top covering report, I think it's 10.1, the recommendations to Cabinet. The question is, are the Cabinet assured that the performance is progressing well? So my question to Councillor Matthew Torrance, as the leader is absent today, but how can that assurance be given when only 60% are on target, and there's questions around some of those that are on target, and there's 24% off target? And are you, as a cabinet, are you satisfied with the remedial work that's been done to drag these stats back on target? Because when you look at the off-track commentary, I don't think it's there. Sorry, a little bit long-winded.
Councillor Matthew, would you like to come back on that question from Councillor Aled?
I'm grateful for the question. I think it's a really good challenge. And no, I'm not satisfied with where our performance is currently. We've clearly got more work to do, and it wouldn't be right to sit here and celebrate things that are off track. But you've got to see it in the round. The whole picture is important, and there is really good progress against some of our most important priorities. But there is clearly more to do. And in terms of the remedial actions, the commitment is that portfolio holders are actively challenging services to deliver, and we continue to do that. And we are regularly meeting with heads of service and directors around performance, because ultimately we want to be where we set ourselves out is in terms of our ambition. So there's more to do, Aled, and it would be wrong for me to suggest that there isn't.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Can I just quick answer on the AMX system?
So, yep.
I've
got John Forsey is here. John, did you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Aled. It's a good point. The AMX system, I just want to reassure you, is working.
Okay.
What we're doing, as Councillor Matthews alluded to, now we're being pressed now for monthly performance data, whereas AMX was collecting quarterly performance data. We're now reconfiguring it to collect monthly performance data. You raised, if I refer to specifically 352, the joy of having this detail now is that didn't seem right to me. Had 67%. We've interrogated the data. It is actually, there were 3 critical defects. They've all been repaired on time. It's just that there was a data input error into the system, which has flagged up the third by showing off track. So we are looking at the infrastructure around AMX as well. I think some of our tablets that we're using are getting on a little bit, so we're looking at replacing. But all that's come about as a result of us looking and being challenged on our performance data, which can only be a positive for us to improve our performance going forward.
Okay, I'm going to butt in there, John, and say thank you very much for that, because that's the first indication that we've heard today of how this data is actually driving the work of what you're doing within your department. So you're saying you're looking at this data, you're using this data, you're interrogating it as a manager of your service, and that is helping you. So that to me is a really positive news. So thank you very much for that. And I can see Councillor Jackie now has her hand up.
Yeah,
Jackie, did you want to come in?
Yes, I'd just like to support what John says, and it is something that we do look at on a very regular basis. And the AMX doesn't just collect data for the corporate strategic equality objectives, it collects data for all kinds of other systems as well. So this is just one part of what the AMX does, and I think it's just updating the AMX to fit in with the corporate strategic objectives, because they don't always sit that clearly inside HTR. We do have to find ways of making sure that we're reaching those objectives. So just to confirm what John says, that we do look at the AMX system regularly, and it does provide us with all kinds of data. This is just 3 parts of data on here that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it is a bit frustrating within the constraints of this meeting, because there are a couple of HRT measures there that are in the red, and it would be great really to go through them line by line, but I'm just very conscious that we can't in this meeting. We don't have the time, and so I think I've said it before. We need to look at how we're doing this. But I've got 2 more hands, so thank you both, Councillor Danny and Councillor Lucy. Over to you, Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware of your comments that we're strapped for time, so I'm going to bundle my questions together. Really, this one wasn't originally on my list, but it was due to the explanations given by Councillor Pete and Dr. Richard. It just drops us back to Eston when Councillor Pete said about the site security measures. And then Dr. Richard said that we would like to stay in front of Eston. So I would like some clarity on is site security something that we should have been addressing in the past as time went on, and Eston have come in and said, look, you haven't done it, or is it something that was just dropped up on Powers Council and expected to deal with? But I'll carry on, and now I'm moving on. You'll be pleased to know that I'm moving on to finance. Right, a few questions around Sustainable Powers Programme. Firstly, what measurable savings have been made? What measurable savings have been achieved through Sustainable Powers so far? How are these savings being reinvested or used to offset budget pressures? Is there a risk the transformation savings may not materialise as forecast? And that's me. Thank you.
Excellent questions, Danny. So I can see Jane has turned her light and camera on there for the finance question. So Jane, do you want to come in first, and then perhaps we'll get Pete to come in and answer your site security education question. So Jane.
I think, to be honest, those questions are really valid for finance panel tomorrow, and that might be a better place to actually pick those up on, because this doesn't really have objectives linked specifically to some of that work. But would you be comfortable to do that, and we can address it tomorrow?
By all means, yes. Thank you. Just remind
Excellent.
I will.
Thank you very much, Councillor Danny, and thank you, Jane. So Pete, could that the same apply there with education? We have education scrutiny tomorrow, and the site security I don't think directly directly links, does it again? So
I think the problem we have with education scrutiny tomorrow, and it's why I pushed through on the attendance, most of the stuff that we're looking at that overlaps into this is actually going to be covered in a confidential session.
Right.
So if I didn't expand on that in this session, the public wouldn't have had the understanding that members would have. In respect to Danny's specific around site safety, we had a budget, we did as much as we could, but we didn't have the budget to put the green fencing around every single school. We tried to prioritise where we knew testing inspections were likely to come up once it had appeared on 2 or 3. But what we have with this one is basically Powys has been viewed as such a safe environment for so long that we've got a whole string of patterns around site safety, such as footpaths, crossing, playing fields and the like, that just wouldn't happen if we had a whole raft of new build schools or if we were in a much more urban environment. So it was very much a catch up. Esdin identified it in a number of inspections. They identified it specifically in the council inspection, and we put in place a core programme to look at all of the potential problems that we can identify and are now working to remedy them. You might recall.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I think you have answered the question as succinctly as possible, I realise, but the clock is really ticking on me yet, and we have another agenda item. So Councillor Lucy, Councillor Peter, I'm going to ask you if you'd like to ask your questions as succinctly as you can, because we're just going to run out of time, guys. But Lucy, lovely. Come in with your question.
It's a very quick point, Chair, but it's going back to the highways targets, but probably elsewhere too. Just where the responses that the service area is monitoring, that doesn't really tell us anything. And when you've got something like the number of rights of way condition reports resolved, where the target's 22 and target's 50 and the actual's 22, that's a really big difference. And just to hear that the service area is monitoring it is not good enough, really, I don't think.
No. And we don't know what that percent refers to, which has been mentioned previously, where we've got a percentage. It would be useful if it were a number, perhaps, wouldn't it? Councillor Jackie, did you want to come in on that?
Well, I'm really glad Councillor Lucy has brought this up, because it is an area that it's constantly worried me as the portfolio holder. We don't seem to be able to make any inroads into this. One of them is for budget reasons. We just don't seem to be able to get the budget that we need to do that. We do rely heavily on volunteers, and they've been working really well, and we have improved our volunteer network. We've improved the support that they're getting. We now have a full-time volunteer project officer. We have newsletters. We work very closely with the Ramblers Association, and we also work very closely with LAF to try and make improvements here, but we still don't seem to be able to make any inroads. So you're quite right to bring this forward. I'm tempted to say that the target is too high, but then that doesn't give us any ambition. So we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place on that one. We really do want to get to that target, but it is extremely difficult. I don't know whether John Forsey, as head of service, wants to come in and mention anything else that we're trying to do, but those are the areas that I've been focusing on. Thank you.
I think it's just the fact that to be told the service area is monitoring it doesn't really tell us anything about what's being done.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Lucy. And that's crossed another one off my list. So thank you for that. I think, as has been mentioned a few times, we can go into these deeper in our individual scrutiny sessions, but I do feel we've really only scratched the surface today. And that's so unfortunate given the amount of information that we have before us, isn't it? So Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm not quite sure actually my question's in for this part now, but it's about recruitment. So I don't know if you want me to mention it now or go into the second part.
Well, the second part is the strategic risk register. So yeah, there are a few measures there around recruitment, aren't there, Peter? So if you do want to do them, and then we'll take this as the last set of questions for this, purely because of the time factor, and then we'll need to come up with our recommendations before we move on to item 7 on the agenda. Okay. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. It's really to do with Border 1 and the vacancies standing at the moment at 249, and the same period last year was 288 vacancies. I'm just interested to know what is the number of candidates applying for the jobs and how they are and when they're advertised, and how many of the jobs positions are filled, and how successful candidates are, and how many candidates are going for each job. I know it's quite a big question, but it's a question that's needed to be answered. And what's the time of the interviews? And I know that there is a part that the quarter doesn't account for seasonal recruitment, but is there any trend of some of the seasonal recruitment actually staying in position? So there's quite a lot there. And are we covering administration, maintenance, road maintenance, apprenticeships, education, catering, or licensing? I'm not quite sure on that.
No. So you're on objective 2 there, which is to support the good quality, sustainable employment, provide training opportunities, and pursue the real living wage and employer accreditation, isn't it? And
That's
these
right.
are on page 41 onwards, the points. And I can see that Gemma's put her hand up. So you'd like to come in on that, Gemma?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Yeah, in relation to recruitment, there's, forgive me if I missed some of your questions there, so please do chip in. They do relate to all positions, so that's across all corporate services and schools as well. The reason that it's off track this quarter, and I think is something that we need to reflect on for next year when we're setting the objectives, is that when we've looked into that, when we realised it was off track, was that in the first quarter we tend to have a lot more vacancies than we do in other times throughout the year, and that is predominantly because of schools. So schools will advertise a lot of their positions in that quarter so that people are in place ready for the start of the new academic year come September. So if you look back at last year in the same quarter, it was similar, and the year before it was higher again. And in terms of progress, in year before last, it was 366. So there has been a significant reduction in the vacancies. In terms of recruiting on first attempt, there's another measure within that shows that there's been an improvement in those positions that we've managed to recruit to on first attempt. It does vary though in terms of our ability to recruit, both with numbers that we get through plus the ability to recruit first time. So we do keep a check of all of that, monitor those roles that are hard to fill, and then we will look then and put some more intensive support into the recruitment around those areas. We're also working with the WLGA at the moment. I'm part of a working group where we're looking across all authorities in Wales to look at perhaps where some of those pinch points are and what some of those vacancies are that we might be able to do something collectively to support. So in terms, I don't have the numbers per job because it varies so much, and we do have some trends that we are conscious of.
Do many stay in post, or do you have to reapply, after a certain period? Because that's quite a costly sort of angle to take from, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We do monitor our turnover rates, and our turnover rate is quite low, but you're quite right. That is a really important HR indicator that we look to see, and the timeliness of when people leave. So we do have that data. Some people will leave early because they're fixed term posts. We do have a substantial amount of fixed term posts, and naturally people will go. We do monitor that. I haven't identified anything that's particularly of an issue there, but certainly that's something that we do and we'll continue to monitor to see if there is any particular areas that have a high turnover quite early on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering those questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Now, I'm really sorry to officers and to my colleagues here on the committees, but I'm afraid we're out of time for this portion of the agenda. So I want us all to think about some recommendations. I've got some suggestions here, which if my fellow chairs and vice chairs are happy, I'll read out and see how you feel about these and see what we can add or change the wording. And then we do need to move on. So firstly, from what you've said there, we want to review the presentation of reports. So that's the layout, the style, the presentation. It may be a member development. Maybe I think Scrutiny could sort of have some working group maybe where we talk about what is good. So we need reports to come to us that members can digest and understand so that we can really get into the nitty-gritty. And we do see good examples. So is that something maybe we could do? Maybe it's a member development. So that's one. Could we consider presenting in-depth top 5 measures as per objective? I think that was suggested by Councillor Gareth. And then review targets and the narrative on the setting process. What percent's significantly overarching and are they challenging enough? And then the next one, I wonder if this meeting should be more timely. It's quite a few weeks since the end of Q1. So we're really looking back. This is almost a historical document. And I do wonder why we can't be having this end of quarter scrutiny at the end of the Q1. So that's something, so that's about the timing of the meeting. And really, as the chair of this meeting, and perhaps I'll turn to Councillor Gwynber, who's chaired in the past, and Councillor Mander's not here today, but this is a really difficult meeting to chair, and I really don't feel that we've hardly scratched the surface, and I do feel sorry for the officers who've put so much work and given up the time, and we've not had opportunity to drill down into each of those lines on the scorecard. So would it be better if this is done individually, or is there an opportunity for the individual scrutiny committees to look at their own off-track items in another way? So over to you, members. What do you think? My fellow chairs, vice chairs, as recommendations, how do they go?
Can I chip in if
please
nobody
do.
else wants to? I do think sometimes individual scrutiny committees could give these items more time and in depth.
So you're happy with that as a recommendation then?
And they probably give it, as they probably have a greater understanding, whether we can come together afterwards to give an overall assurance. Each scrutiny group has looked at it, whether that's a possibility. But the scrutiny committees really do need to look at the targets on a constant basis, not just once every 2 or 3 years.
It's supposed to be quarterly, isn't it? So these are quarterly meetings. But so basically, as those recommendations I've set out, you're happy with those. Is there anything extra you'd like to add? Anybody, members or chairs or vice chairs?
I'm quite happy with the presentation of these numbers, by the way. I don't totally agree with you there. But the content of the response, I do have concerns about. But the presentation overall presentation, I'm happy enough. It does bring all the information together.
No, I think it was the presentation of the report that Councillor Gareth was suggesting as not of the scorecard. Yeah. Okay, if we're happy with those as recommendations, can you all say yay, put your hand up?
Chair, could I ask that councillors who are happy with those recommendations use the electronic system to raise their hand? There's quite a number of us today and it's difficult to flick through screens, so it just means that we can count more easily.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, members. Yeah, hands going up. And nobody's put anything extra in the chat, or there we are. Okay.
That's lovely, thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much, and thank you to all the officers that joined us for that section. And I'm really sorry if you didn't get to sort of defend or explain your particular lines within the score chart there. So we're going to move on now to item number 7, which is the Strategic Risk Register report. And just having to zoom in, it shrunk. So this report, I think we got Mary, is that right? Councillor David isn't with us today. So who's going to be presenting that report for us? Councillor Gareth E. Jones, you've got your hand up. I don't think you're presenting the report to us. Or Councillor Danny.
I can do.
Mary, here she is. Welcome, Mary. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute then. So yeah, I'll do a quick overview, and we've got Bets here as well if we wanted to go into any more detail on it as well.
Thank you very much.
So this is the Q1 risk register report. So it sets out what the risk register is. It sets out what the changes have been since the last quarter. They're in in section 3.5, and then in the appendices you've got more detailed explanation of and information from the JCAD system, which is how we the system that we use to manage and record the risks on. You'll see there in paragraph 3.4, we've got a summary really of the heat map. So we've got one risk that where the probability is almost certain, but the impact is moderate. One where it's almost certain and the impact is major, and 4 then where it's likely with major impact, and then 2 there with a potential severe impact, 1 likely and 1 possible. So those are the non-confidential strategic risks that we have there. So during the quarter, there were some changes. There were some changes to the ED 0056, which is the education related risk around the number of schools in a formal ESTIN category. And as we've just been discussing, really that drive really to reduce that to 0. So the impact of that has changed from moderate to major. The financial sustainable risk, FIN 0001, we've changed that impact from severe to major, and the probability has changed from possible to likely, but the rating overall has changed from 20 to 16. So we're reducing the scoring on that one. And that's as a result of a lot of the work that we've been doing, our track record in delivering a balanced budget, but also the moving into the 5-year budget planning regime that we've started in this year as well. And there's also a change to the risk around the Wickers system, just reducing the scoring of that from 20 to 15 as a result of likely to possible. And I think we've still got some members of officers from other services, but I understand that that's as a result of a better functioning of the system in more recent times. So we've had more stability within the system there. We are expecting a final report from Audit Wales on our risk management arrangements. We're expecting that within the next week or so. So that will be going through the process then of getting a management response and then coming through to Governance and Audit Committee as well. That's currently planned for October, and as long as everything goes to schedule, we're not expecting that to have to change at all. I'll leave it there for now and go to questions, unless Bex wants to add anything.
Did Bex want to come in? No, we got some hands up for questions. So, Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you. They're not really questions, just observations that I've made. I've noted that the climate and nature has a lot of funding gaps and implementation delays. Education is escalated due to ESTIN categories. Finance risk has downgraded due to budget improvements, really, but budget planning. Yeah. And ICT really remains high to system limitations, really, and compliance challenges. But again, not really questions, just observations, but perhaps somebody could cover something on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danny. Very good observations there. So, Rinna, have you got some questions?
Well, I've put some work into trying to understand these risk registers, and I just want to congratulate people because the really serious category, 25 by 25, has been reduced. There's nothing there now. But I wanted to ask, for instance, with adult social care, really done really well, gone from 25 to 9. How has the figure of 9 been arrived at? That would be lovely if Sharon perhaps could answer. Thank you.
Okay, Sharon's still with us. Here we are. Who's?
Sorry, yes, I'm just struggling getting off mute.
No problem. Thank you, Sharon.
And I dropped out a little bit. I was which it was at the risk for adult social care and
Yes, it wasn't the WICIS, it was I think it was the other one.
The meet and demand.
Powys own care home, domiciliary care, all that sort of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's based the matrix will give us the number, the risk matrix, and what we do, we review the risks as a senior management team and with our officers regularly. And the reason why we've reduced it is because of the increased number of providers that we've secured in domiciliary care. We're providing over well over 2,000 more hours a week this year than we were last year. So there's been some of the work that we've done around improving the market is showing fruits now. So we've reduced that. That's why we reduced that risk. So we'll bring the data and the evidence back to that risk review group and then reapply the matrix.
So, because you could have gone down to 20 or 16, but it was so good, it was 9. So you said,
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
and it's dependent on the risk matrix, and Bets might want to give more detail on the risk matrix.
Thank you, Sharon. So did Bex come in there? No. Okay.
I don't mind. It's whether...
Are you there, Bex? I can't see you. Oh, there we are, down at the bottom.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Thank you,
sorry.
Bex.
I can, but I don't want to take up more time in today's meeting. But very simply, Councillor, we have a risk matrix framework that sits behind this. It's part of the risk management policy and guidance, and that gives officers a little bit of well, I use the word again, a framework to help them decide what the range of probability, the range of impact in relation to various organisational activities like service delivery, safeguarding, finance, etc. I believe I have shared that risk management policy and guidance with the committee before, but I can do again by all means if you'd like me to.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Corinna. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just sort of musing again on this, the point about joint sessions being the best way forward on this, and just looking at that risk fin 001 about a sustainable budget. The bit is I'm not sure if we've got all the information here to enable us as a scrutiny to be able to determine if we agree with that reduction in the rating. Now, the reason I say that is I was in governance and audit this morning, and we also had the Treasury Management Report for Q1, which set out that there were some council tax arrears basically arising from the self-catering units moving from business rates to council tax. But the Section 151 officer in committee this morning was able to explain why that would not significantly impact on that risk. So rather long-windedly, we've got the skill set, I suppose, in the depth of scrutiny, audit and governance that we may not be getting here today because we haven't got that Treasury Management Report. And I don't know if that applies to other risks as well.
Okay. I think that's just a comment, is it, Pete, really?
Yeah, just really on the best way
Yeah.
forward for these, whether it goes back to the individual scrutinies or we continue with this joint, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, there is some narrative above, but as you say, it's flicking back into and how in depth that is. Councillor Chris Walsh. Hiya, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I was at the Governance and Audit Committee this morning, and I raised some of these questions on there, but I'll do it to obviously some members and officers may not have been present at that. So I picked up on page 58 of the report. Let me just find a bit on there. there was a
758. Yeah.
58. There's ASC 0064, the WICIS system.
Yes.
And obviously, when I read that, it flags up the severity to it. And I know there's a lot of work going on in relation to that risk. It was clarified that data cleansing is going on and that's progressing. But I'd asked the specific question this morning at the risk management, at the governance and audit committee, sorry, about any downtime. And the feedback that I had, and I'm sure that Sharon, who was would confirm that there was no reported incidents of any downtime, which is encouraging. Obviously, as we move towards our new system that's going to replace it, that gives us some additional assurance once we have that in place. The other risk that I did also flag up on was under the ASC 0071, and that was in relation to getting some clarification regarding the time delay to doing the financial analysis regarding some of the nursing home beds and the provision. Again, officers reassured us at the governance and audit committee that it's quite an in-depth process, hence why there is a time delay in getting that information, which again was helpful in that debate. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, and that was the one that Councillor Corinna's just highlighted, isn't it? That you know, it's come down in terms of its risk number. So yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Chris. Councillor Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know what page it's on, but it's right at the bottom. The buildings, number 3031, PPP 003031. Risk there, it has improved slightly, but I'm very concerned. I expect perhaps the school ones improved a bit because of the security fences, etc. But are we ever going to afford to get these buildings right, or are we just going to have to close some and then improve the score? It is serious, isn't it? So any more
building condition?
Because the condition reports that come out from the schools, for the schools, I expect that's obviously fed into it. So any answers?
So who have we got? Oh, we got Matt.
Yeah.
Afternoon, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, I know the condition survey reports of the schools have been long overdue, but the Gwilym and the team have gone through the information. The information has been collated. There's a hell of a lot of information that had to be sifted through. So there's a report going to be coming into CLT in the next few weeks, basically setting out now how we deal with those issues. But you are right, Councillor Jones, in terms of some of those schools and court buildings are going to cost a fair amount of money. So Gwilym and the team are putting risk assessments in place to try and mitigate as much as we can on that. But be assured, that report is coming in shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Matt. Thank you, Matt, for that. Sorry. Yeah. Councillor Allard.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. On the tables below where you've got all the mitigation stuff, there's a column there that says uncontrolled. What's it short for? Uncontrolled. Or because we normally got inherent and residual. On top of the coloured boxes, the header for that column is uncontrolled and then current.
Sorry, Councillor Allard, what page are you on?
Oh, any page. 90.
Previous inherent, residual.
No, where the coloured
control
boxes.
or actions. Oh, I see what you mean. Next to that column there, next to portfolio, it's got uncontrolled current.
Yeah.
You're asking what does that stand for?
Uncontrolled. Yeah. Is it uncontrolled risk? Or what is it short for?
Can Bets come in, please, Chair? She's got
Yes.
her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I've just got to close one screen to see the hands up. Yeah, Beck, please come in and explain.
Sorry, Councillor Davis. Yeah, I was being polite and waiting with my hand up. Yes, I can explain. Apologies. It's actually because we use this JCAD, and JCAD obviously is not unique to just ourselves at Powys. It's a national system that's used by everyone, and it's again with risk. There is a semi-unique language used, but it's not always the same. So many organisations use the wording controlled and uncontrolled instead of inherent and residual. So it is uncontrolled means inherent in this respect, Councillor Davis. We just cribbed the same report to save us having to pay a fee. We're trying to be efficient with our money and our pennies.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you've explained that, Beth. That's fine. You're happy with that, Councillor Hollett?
Yes, but that leads me to the question, and it links back to the previous performance report as well, which shows the ridiculousness of the target within the performance report on ED 0056 around the Estin. Is that one, isn't it? Around the Estin categories. 56, 0056. It's on page 69, and there's some summary at the very end. You know,
yes, that's correct.
In that commentary in the second column, it talks about zero there, doesn't it? Having zero schools within Estin category. And then, but when you go along and look at the uncontrolled risk, is 12. And when you're controlling that risk, it's gone up to 16. Yes. That's the only risk on these papers that has increased by action by the council. That's what it reads like to me. Have I got that right or wrong?
Who could come in and explain that to us?
Sorry, Angela, can I just add to that one from Alid?
Yes.
Because I was going to actually challenge why it's only gone from 12 to 16, because I would have thought it should have gone from 12 to 20. I think it's a severe risk.
Yeah, but that's the only one that's gone up from uncontrolled to current, isn't it?
So, who we got from education with us still here? Councillor Peter, you still with us? Oh, Dr. Richard. Oh, and Emma's got her hand up. Should we take Dr. Richard first?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chair. So the assessment of the risk was immediately after our Estin inspection, when we had a look at the position of our schools across the authority at that time in terms of their outcomes. What we know is that the improvement that we need to make across our service and across our schools needs to be a sustainable one, and that will take time despite the fact that we're acting at pace. So while we've seen improvements outside of the Q1 report, the current level of risk is at 16, and that acknowledges the depth of challenge and the depth of improvement that we need to make in the education service.
So when was the assessment about the uncontrolled risk made? Wasn't that made at the same time?
Yes, uncontrolled risk. I can see Bets has got her hand up. Uncontrolled risk assessment at the same time that the whole strategic risk register was reviewed in education.
But I just can't understand why the risk has gone up.
I could see our CEO Emma has got her hand up. Emma, would you like to come in at that point?
Yeah, I think we've got a timing issue here and an error in terms of the timing of them coming through. As Dr. Richard said, we had a level Estin in terms of the report exposed it, but actually the work that the team have been doing over the summer, led in Matt Perry, Gwilym Davis's area, we'll see the risk reduce in that area. So I think there's a timing issue, and there's an error from the element of the JCAD bit being updated and moving on. So I think we've got to take that away, and thank Councillor Davis for raising it.
So it's likely that the uncontrolled risk was made well before Estin came to Powys, and then the controlled risk was an assessment afterwards, was it? Oh, sorry, Bets. Sorry. shouldn't jump in.
There is a timing issue here.
Yeah,
okay.
Just to add to what Dr. Jones and our CEO has added, yeah, the inherent, as I say, which you on this report is uncontrolled, was the day the risk was identified. So that was quite a time period ago. It's then since that all the work the service has done, the actual inspection, the report, the work that's been gone on since has then highlighted that this report is now that this risk as of today or as of Q1 is now considered to be a much higher risk. But when it was very first identified right back in, I can't remember when, at that point it was considered to be that score. The inherent risk is very unlikely to change because it was the day the score was the day the risk was first identified.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Could you get the dates for us when the original assessment was made or not?
I can get the date for when the risk was put on JCAD. I can do
Okay.
that. I don't know whether the service will be able to actually look into when they first identified the risk.
Thank you.
Okay, members, again, I'm sort of a little bit disappointed we haven't got the time before us to go into this into depth, but looking at the detailed risk information on page 100, apart from that ED 0056 there that we've had some challenge on there by Councillor Allard, thank you for that, Councillor Allard, it's looking quite a positive picture, but I think we haven't done it justice to really scratch below the surface and put that challenge in that we should have. However, time is against us, and members, I'm looking to you now for some recommendations. So, Councillor Allard, have you got a recommendation based on that challenge there with regard to the education targets?
Please check the paperwork before publishing would be my main recommendation. But it is. No, I find the commentary in this far more acceptable than the previous performance. You know, this.
Well done, Allard. Some positive news.
I was positive about the previous one as well.
Indeed. So what I've got here is so the risk score and mitigation of the risks to be reviewed. So can we ask that those initial scores be reviewed? And then due to the timings of the risk being identified, as you've noted there, that yeah, as you're saying, really, it's that we're double checking the data. So is there anything else we can make as a recommendation based on what we've got and how little time we've had? What about my fellow chairs and the other committees?
And I've got to say, it's still disappointing to see there's 8, is it, in the crimson pink category of extremely high risks. And one of those is, some of those aren't that controllable by the council, but others are, like the finance one, and other things are controllable.
Yeah.
So
can we make a recommendation out of that, Councillor Allard? So can we say that we're going to recommend that officers, cabinet work harder to bring these targets down, that we look at what actions we can do beyond the council to support that work?
Officers work extremely hard already.
No, we can make comments on what are before us, but the point is we're trying to add value, aren't we? Yes. So we want to come out with something that is going to add value to cabinet and to our officers, to our directors. So that's what I'm looking for from members. Emma, come in and help, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's the same on the previous report as it is on this report in terms of the scrutiny, is really around how we drive the improvement and, as you say, add the value. It's not really about the overarching process. It's about the underneath. Are there things that we could be putting in place in terms of mitigating to bring down those risks that are of the highest level? Have we got assurance in terms of the things that we're already doing? Are we seeing things from elsewhere that maybe not on the risk register that we need to give consideration to in terms of delivering the corporate and strategic quality plan? So, like you say, Chair, it's about that added value in respect of those suggestions that can help us drive forward on this in this instance, drive forward the mitigations to bring down the risk. In some instances, we have to accept the risk, and we use the language of tolerate. And we just accept as that level. But if we can treat the risk, then what are those things that we could do over and above that is already there? I don't know if that helps, Chair, but trying.
So I'm wondering whether perhaps some sort of working group would be beneficial if it were chairs, vice chairs, or volunteer members of the respective scrutiny groups. That if we had a working group to somehow go through this before having the scrutiny. I don't know. Councillor Allard.
Just the page 100, I think. It is useful there. You can see the previous residual risk alongside the current risk, so you can see progress there.
Yes.
But there's only progress on 2 or 3 of those. Most of them, the level of risk has not been diminished. The one on the sustainable budget, to be fair, that has gone down from 20 to 16. However, it's still pink, but most of the others have stayed the same. So from a scrutiny point of view, you'd wish to see more progress on those numbers.
So are you proposing that as a recommendation, Councillor Allard? Because that's what I'm looking for now.
Yeah, okay. Whether we can track those over a longer time scale.
Okay.
Because I don't know when that previous residual rating was done. Was that the end of the last quarter or this time last year? To understand the movements within the risks. That's what I would like to be able to track slightly better.
Okay, so our scrutiny officers are working extremely hard behind the scenes to try and collate what we're saying into something of use. How about support the development and implementation of targeted mitigation strategies that address underlying issues via working groups across scrutiny committees? Anybody like that? Requests that future reports include a timeline or summary of historical ratings to support and inform scrutiny in the decision making.
Yes, it's about trends, just to capture the trends over a longer time period.
Okay, I'm really struggling here because we need to go into confidential session for item 11. We've got 8 minutes left here, and committee, I've got no recommendations unless anybody wants to support the 3 we've just put forward.
Chair,
Emma.
do you mind? I know you're not asking for me to support the recommendations, but if I may, I don't think at this stage my advice would be that you don't necessarily need the working group element. What you might need to do is think about, are there specifics that you want to consider in your work programme to do more thematic review across particular elements? Because don't forget, in terms of the risk, the deep dive does happen through Governance and Audit Committee, and they do the assurance element, so that's already covered in that element. If we look at the specifics of the report and what the report is asking in terms of it's providing in terms of advice from officers, then to go before Cabinet for consideration, it's around that escalation or de-escalation element. And our scrutiny minded to support that advice? Is there anything that they disagree with? Those elements, or in this instance it might be that actually we're supportive of that, but we encourage Cabinet to look more broadly and officers to look more broadly at the mitigations on the higher level risks that have been within the risk register for some time.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is before we come to this screen and do this work, we need to do something else. But yeah, that may be it. Okay, so where are we, members? I don't know where besides Councillor Allard, I can't see my fellow chairs now or vice chairs, but shall we leave it that we have no recommendations?
Chair, can I ask, you did mention the one about the risk score and mitigation of risk, the education risk, ED 56.
Yeah.
Did committee want that noted as a recommendation or no recommendations?
I'm struggling because I'm getting no response. So the recommendations can't come from the chair. I can put forward suggestions, but the recommendations have to come from the committee. So I do need some response from members. If you're not minded to make any recommendations, that's absolutely fine, but we do need some sort of response.
I thought I did make a recommendation around the tracking of
Yeah, I've read that out, Councillor Allard, and we've got no support or hands up or anything for that. So, Councillor Danny, right, I've got a few hands going up now, so I'm not sure what we're supporting. Councillor Danny.
What area is this recommendation for? Can you just, or is it straight through?
Well, overall, for the risk register.
Right. I do think that we could do with scrutinising funding strategies and delivery timelines in climate and nature a bit more.
Yeah. Okay.
And perhaps a deep dive into estimate categories and mitigation plans around that.
Okay, would members support that as two recommendations there proposed by Councillor Danny? I think we need to show hands up on the screen.
So I've got 3 recommendations written down here, Chair. So I've got the risk score and mitigation of the education risk 56, a request that future reports include a timeline or summary to capture trends to inform scrutiny, and a further scrutiny of funding strategies and delivery timelines for climate and nature, and a deep dive into the ESTIN risks. Sorry, so that's 4 basically.
Yes. So Sarah, I can see you've got your hand up.
It was just in support of Alad's recommendation and the other education one.
Fabulous. So shall we take all 4 of them together in the absence of anything else and nobody coming forward with anything else? Would you be happy to support all 4 of those as recommendations going forward from this committee? There we are. We're getting a few hands up now. Thank you all, members. Is that all right, Gemma?
That's lovely. If you could just leave your hands up for a moment, just so that we can make sure we've got them all counted. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you, everybody.
So now, members, we go on to item 11. We've got 3 minutes left and we need to go into confidential session. So if officers could do that for us.
Shall I propose we go into confidential session, Chair?
Oh, that's a really good idea. Thank you, Councillor Allard. Yes. Would everybody agree that we go into confidential session?
Chair, can I just ask you to read the text under item 10, please, just for the benefit of the public?
I haven't got an item 10 on my agenda. I've got an item 9 and an item 11.
I've just popped it across to you in the chat.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the monitoring officer has determined the category 3 of the access to information procedure rules applies to the following items. His view on the public interest test, having taken account of the provisions of rule 14.8 of the council's access to information rules, was that to make this information public would disclose information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. These factors, in his view, outweigh the public interest in disclosing this information. Members are asked to consider these factors when determining the public interest test, which they must decide when considering to exclude the public from this part of the meeting. So I'm asking you members to vote in agreement to go into confidential session. Hands up, please.
Could I just have a proposer and a seconder, please, Chair, for the record?
So I think Councillor Allard has proposed. Thank you, Councillor Allard.
Seconder, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Sandra. Seconder.
No, Councillor Sue.
Oh, sorry, Sue. Sorry, Sue.
Is that right?
And hands up. Lovely. Thank you, everybody.